Welcome to the Bladtcast. I am Christian Blatt. Our returning champions this week, Mr. Jeff DeRay.
Could you hear my finger guns?
I was trying to think of some kind of like fighter name, and I wanted to rhyme it with Massachusetts, and all I came up with was the ass from Mass. And I mean, there's way bigger asses.
That works. I'm okay with
that. But
there's
way bigger asses than you in Massachusetts.
I'm not huge ass from Mass.
And that's true. But now I can't think of anything that rhymes with Ramona, but our own Ramona Quimby, age 8.
Ramona.
The one and only William J. Sterling.
Look at this. I just got AXS or whatever. I wish Brzezinski was here. I got push notification. Stagecoach 2024 dates announced. That's what we're talking about for the rest of the hour.
You know what's funny? He told me he had a conference call about an hour ago. I guarantee that's what it was because of the timing. So yes, he may or may not come by today. Usually I don't expect him to. I might send him a kind reminder, but I don't really expect it. Anyway, glad that we're all here together again. 3 shows in a row. That is insane.
Like
can we make it? Can we make it 4? The answer is no. I know Will's heading out of town. So, but we had a good run though. We did 3 good shows together. And I mean, there's old podcasts that don't last more than 3 shows.
I think that's most podcasts. Yeah. Hey, we're super excited. Just listen to me and my pals talk about hockey, and then they're like, we have kids and we have
Have any of you guys had a family member try to be like, hey, I tried to do a podcast with my friend. Like, here, would you listen to it?
Oh, no, I haven't. Yeah. I've had people ask me to check out their podcasts, and honestly, anyone who's asked me to listen, that is a friend. It's always been good enough. You can give constructive criticism. And then, there were like listeners from the old radio show who had wanted us to listen. The worst though was this guy. This was the podcast, the Westwood One podcast era. This guy was producing a piece called Uncle Otis, and he was convinced it was good for Dennis. And I listened, and I coached him, and there were these like produced pieces, and he wanted us to play them, and he kept pushing. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna play it, and it did not go over well because it wasn't funny, and I was like, I do what I can. I'm still on Uncle Otis's mailing list, though. He just got one this week.
Amazing.
That's probably the only reason I remember.
That's what's funny is that as I realized I was saying out loud the description of like the it's just some guys sitting around talking about whatever with their drinks and doing some
podcast.
It's like, wait a minute. Except you have had the fortitude to see it through for 450 some odd episodes. So you actually
550.
I'm sorry. You're right. I should look up 552.
You don't count that initial 100 since they're not available.
Oh wait,
that's right.
Is this the new 552?
Oh man,
That's a good deep little cut.
Really should have prepared for this to be the new 552. So I kept teasing in earlier episodes things that we were going to talk about, and we didn't get to it. And last night I was at Book Soup in West Hollywood. Book signing for for our visual audience. The gentleman in the middle is Brian Slagle, who started Metal Blade Records 41 years ago. He was there for his book. Joined on the right by comedian Don Jameson, past Bladtcast guest, and he will factor into some of my tales of my trip to New York. And the lovely lady to the left is known professionally as Stacy Bitch because she's from the band Bitch. And that is John Bush from Armored Saint there. But had a lovely evening out in the Sunset Strip area. Thought we were going to the Rainbow because it was a bunch of rock guys, but that didn't happen. There was something going on at the Whiskey. I'm like, oh man, it's going to be like old time. Nobody wanted to go to the Whiskey. So we just went to a quieter place, had some conversation, and I am behind the scenes working on something with Mr. Brian Slagle that I would love to be able to tell people about, but nothing's nothing's signed, nobody's been paid, but hopefully sometime in the near future. And he's got some great stories. His record label, signed Anthrax and Slayer, and then a ton of other bands, but those are the big ones, and it goes from there. But great guy. Talked a lot about concerts and whatnot, and he grew up in the LA area, and he like hates coming here now because he's like, you drive down Sunset and everything you remember is gone. I'm like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only lived here 20 years, and even I'm like, oh yeah, there used to be some. But you know what? That Arby's with the big 10-gallon hat, that isn't going anywhere. That's still, that other end of Sunset.
The Garrett
Nobody's going to close that thing down.
Didn't they say, so they closed the Viper, or are closing the Viper? It's officially closed.
Yes,
I think. So. They said the person who's building like a big high-rise apartment complex now on what will be the former lot was like, don't worry, it's coming back. It's going to be the ground floor of our luxury apartment building. I'm like, you just fundamentally misunderstand what these clubs used to be and represent. The fact that you're like, no, there's going to be a new Viper room. It's going to be the lamest Viper room ever. It's just going to be David Benoit playing smooth jazz.
Can you imagine living on the first floor of that apartment building if you didn't like the acts that come through? Like, what a horrible fucking idea. That sounds terrible.
I don't even know if they're going to follow through.
As Bob Dylan said, the times they are a-changing. CBGB's down in the Village in New York is, I think it's next to a Chase Bank now, and it was like a John Varvatos clothing store. It was like the least punk rock thing you could imagine when you see it. You look and you go like, oh yeah, that was a really cool place, at some point in history. And now it's the opposite. Hopefully people say that about the Bladtcast one day, because then at least we have the reputation of having once been a cool place.
Yeah.
Even if we no longer are.
We just have to wait for people to gentrify us. That's usually what the turning point is.
It's once this show got political.
Yeah.
We did lose that one guy.
That was the gentrification moment. Exactly.
We did lose that one guy, didn't we? Yeah. That's too bad. Yeah, I don't even think I can see his tweets anymore. But don't worry, I screenshot the ones that matter. When we do our 25th anniversary retrospective, I'll pull all those clips out of the vault. In any case, So back in June, I as they say, I hit the road a few weeks ago, and I was. That's sort of the motif for my storytelling here.
I was going to say the Muppets. Yeah.
Well, I'm moving right along with Kermit and Fozzie. I'm hitting the road. A bear and a frog seeing America in a Studebaker. I mean, there really isn't much. I would say there isn't much more American than that. And all sorts of things come to mind, when we talk about that. The song in general, the Moving Right Along from the Muppet movie. I almost called it The Great Muppet Caper. Imagine how embarrassing that would have been. Also, how insane that would have been if I had called it The Great Muppet Caper. But in any case, be very, very pro Muppets, and it's fun to think about, And I don't know, I did a fair amount of driving, as I'll talk about. And first of all, on a trip like this, I was by myself, and like taking like a 5-hour drive by myself where, I can listen to podcasts or music or whatever I want, driving through upstate New York, practically to Canada. And this is the thing about when you live here, Will, and, Jeff, you probably have gotten accustomed to living in other parts of the country where things are green and there's so much life, and it's bright and it's fun. And here everything's like, like brown and dead, and like, oh, look, there used to be a fire over there, and oh, but earlier there was a fire over there at some point. And so, like, I don't know. I find it enjoyable. How do you each feel about a good solo road trip? I think 5 hours is about my max. Like, here that's like a long drive to Vegas. Back when I lived on the East Coast, that was like going to Boston or going to Washington, D.C. I was kind of tapped out after 5, but I liked it right up until about 4.5 hours. But let me ask you first, Jeff, if you like to hit the open road.
Currently, I mean, I don't really go a whole ton of places, so that's hard to say, right? So I think it's a relative thing. When I was in LA and I was skiing a lot and doing a lot of that stuff, I would drive to Mammoth, I would drive to Big Bear for day trips. So like driving 5 hours, driving to Joshua Tree, all that stuff. So it's like driving a few hours and going to these things was always worth it, and it was never really a big deal. I've driven to Vegas by myself. Like it was all fine and easy because it's also, I think one big difference is out there, mostly you just hit these long stretches with nothing. There's nothing on either side, and it's just a real straight road. And that actually can make it easy because you're just scooting along, you're listening to music, you can kind of phase out. Whereas here, I've noticed like when we take longer trips, half the time we hit a point where we're just like winding around these like crazy old roads. And I'm like, I can't not pay attention because I will feel sick or crash off the road. So I definitely think longer trips here can get a little bit tougher. But that said, I remember when I was in college, I drove from here to like South Jersey, and that took like 9 hours because those old shitty GPSs that you used to have before your phone had it. Took me right through.
You mean like a TomTom?
Exactly. Took me right through New York City on my way to Jersey, and I was like, "This is absolutely the worst idea." I think I spent 2.5 hours just in traffic in and around New York, and then of course, as soon as I hit Jersey, just the wafting garbage smell, and I was like, "Oh my god, why? Why is this place so awful?"
You know, the long drives, the smells, the olfactory presentation is a big part of it. Obviously, I'm sure Jeff, you made the drive at some point, but the drive from LA to San Francisco is kind of like part of what Jeff is talking about, where it's like there's just nothing and it's very boring and there's really nothing to look at and you get tired and it's not pretty, except for that one spot where it just reeks of cow shit for miles ahead. And then you pass.
I'm fond of that spot now just because it gives me something to look forward to. Even if it's negative reinforcement, it's at least it's a milestone.
I look forward to getting past it, but if, by the way, just to circle back, if I were taking a road trip with Kermit and Fozzie, the thing that I would be the most excited would be to turn at the fork in the road. Which, oh my God, as a kid, literally, I don't think anything was funnier to me than the fork in the road.
There's a fork in the road.
I mean, come on, there's a fork in the road. But what about you, Will? What about you and I have done some drives together out to some Native American lands down to Chula Vista. We've done some
Bernardino.
Oh yeah,
that's where the casino is, right? San Bernardino.
Where we saw Kiss Acoustic. I mean, it's Highland, but yes, it is San Bernardino. Yeah, San Bernardino.
Yeah. I've driven apparently now all over the fucking place. So. Growing up, my grandmother lived in Northern California, Redding, which is 2 hours north of Sacramento. And we would just make that drive from San Diego. And that was about a 10, 11-hour drive. And we would do that sometimes twice a year, Christmas time and summer. And so that stretch of the 5 you're talking about going up to San Francisco, it's that, but times 3. Because you don't at least then turn off to the nice coastal part of San Francisco. You just keep going up the 5. The directions to their house at the time where they lived were as simple as this. You get on the I-5 North, exit Deschutes, turn right onto their street. That was it. Except you're on the 5 for 11 hours. So that I kind of got used to that mind numbingness of like there being nothing. But now I think because that's something I've driven for so long, I prefer what Jeff is talking about, where I'm like, I even if I get sick and it's windy, like at least I have to pay attention to what I'm doing and I can look at the road. When it's just flat and there's nothing for hour after hour, like I'm definitely like, you can. When I drove across the country then too, from Long Beach to Cambridge.
Right.
And I remember thinking, well, at least we get to drive through states that I've never been to, so it'll be something new to look at. And I'm not exaggerating. It was almost entirely 3 days of nothing to look at. It was awful. I mean, 3 12-hour days of just interstate, boring, shitty, because we were taking the fastest route that we could to get there within 5 days. Next time I'd love to do another cross-country road trip where I like take a month and actually like stop and take side roads. Yeah. But that was with Casey and Charlie in the car. And then when I had to drive home, because Casey moved to Scottsdale for work, I drove back from Cambridge by myself. So
Wow.
that was 12-hour days with Charlie, just me and Charlie in Search of America, our little Steinbeck novel. But the same thing.
Charlie.
Exactly. Trying to make good timing. So all my days were 12, 13-hour days. And it was pretty mind-numbing. I would like to do it a fun way.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I had actually just been thinking about when I drove across the country in the RV with Natasha, and it's interesting that you say that, because I was just thinking how I don't remember being bored ever, even when it was not much going on, because it was so exciting seeing places I hadn't really seen. You know, like I've been sporadically around the country, like a good amount of places, but I hadn't been in a lot of those middle America type places. So even places like Nebraska, where there wasn't as much going on, it was just interesting. And it was interesting. I think it was also like I had to, even when it was just flat and nothing, pay extreme attention, because I was driving a house down the road. And like the very first day, our Charlie, the cat, we were in full stop traffic. Like we literally stopped at a Walmart, because it's like Walmart, you can park in their parking lots overnight. So it was basically like a free place to stay each night. So we like traveled from Walmart to Walmart across the country. But we stopped at like a Walmart barely outside of LA County, because it took like 2 or 3 hours, because it was right. We left on like July 1st or 2nd. So it was horrible 4th of July traffic and a huge mistake. So we were just barely moving. The RV was like killing me, because trying to drive that and stop traffic is just like the worst. And our Charlie, the cat, crawled under the fucking brake pedal. So there was a point where I was like, get the cat. I will literally stomp her to death if I have to. We are all going to die if you don't get the cat. So it was just like, oh my God.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jeff. This doesn't sound stressful at all. I don't.
No.
How many days did you allot for driving across in an RV?
I think we took about 5 days, because it was like that first day we barely went anywhere. And it was, I was the only one who drove. Natasha drove literally 1 inch at a gas station to pull it up for me. And that was it. I did everything else by myself, because it was like, 10+ hour days every day. And so it was like that first day we barely went anywhere. So the second day we made it to the Grand Canyon. And then of course we were like trying to leave the Grand Canyon, and it was like we went one way for miles, only for it to be like, and of course we were running low on gas, and then it's like, psych, can't go this way. So we're like, oh cool, let's turn around and drive miles and miles back the other way. But then after that, it was just like stops. I think we stopped in Nebraska and Ohio, and then after that I think we made it back to Mass. So it was only the 4 or 5 days, and I was just going as far as I possibly could. Like we didn't hang out anywhere. We would stop before it got dark and after a certain amount of time, because it was just like we would get up early and start driving usually earlier in the day. So it was easier to just get to the Walmart, pick up like whatever supplies we needed, walk the dog and stuff, and then just like hang out and watch like a movie or something, and then pass out by like 9 o'clock every night.
Yeah. I feel like along with road trip stories are often poop stories. Like we don't have to get into it, but I had coming back by myself.
Could be the whole show. Let's see what happens.
It was my final leg of the journey. It was on the 4th of July, and I was trying to make it to Scottsdale, because that's where Casey had moved by 4th of July.
By the way, Scottsdale is the best place to poop in all of Arizona. I think it's important to highlight.
I didn't end up pooping there.
No.
The night before, I had stopped in Eric, Oklahoma, which is like a town of like 300 people. And it's really just like, it's a town.
All named Eric.
All that there is like the Flying J and like a Wendy's. And then like there was a pizza place by the Motel 6 or wherever the fuck I was staying. And I asked the girl when I checked into the room, I was like, how's that pizza place? She was like, it's pretty good. I was like, I'll take a gamble. So I ordered, I don't know why. This is not ever a common order for me. I ordered a cheeseburger pizza. That already sounds like a bad decision. And 6 chicken wings. And I got the food, and it was clearly like the chicken wings were like a Costco bag of frozen chicken wings that had been like just heated up and then like dumped wing sauce on them.
Yeah,
they
were put on your plate in the Kirkland bag. Like the logo was right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And the pizza was like, it was a personal size pizza. So it was like, your 4 little small slices, but I was like, fuck it. I don't care. I'm starving. I ate everything. And I was like, there's a chance I could regret this tomorrow. We'll see what happens. I leave Oklahoma successfully, get into Texas. As I'm driving through Amarillo, Texas, I'm hit with that strong feeling of like, I should start getting a plan together for the next stop so I know where I'm headed. Within the span of 30 seconds, it went from me like casually looking to something on my phone to like someone's fist just like punched my whole stomach and said, you have, if you're lucky, 120 seconds to figure out what it is that you're going to do. And I was like, I'm going to fucking die. And because it's 4th of July, every other freeway overpass was a bunch of Trump supporting people with like all of the America garb holding up their Trump signs and like waving at people like America first and whatever. And I remember just being like, fuck you guys, every time I'd go by them. And the guy that already stopped listening, it's good that he's not hearing this. So there's a section where I'm like, I can pull off the freeway and it's like a dirt road in front of like some fucking farm or something. And I had just passed an overpass full of Trump supporters. And I just run out of the car and open up like the back passenger door and the front passenger door to make like a little stall area and just drop a squat and take the biggest shit in the world on Amarillo, Texas on the 4th of July.
By the way, that is exactly what our forefathers were planning when they,
it is my God-given freedom that people have died and fought for me to take a big shit on Texas. And considering
Speaking of taking a shit on Texas, our pal Jason Blair, who lives in Texas, but he has good advice for you. Always keep some wet wipes in the glove box. Helpful when the next exit is 40 miles away. That's something that I remember from my drive cross country. Was you get to Utah and it's like, next service is 100 miles. You're like, well, clearly that's a joke. There's no way. Now, of course, I had plenty of gas. I wasn't going to take it. But then you drive for like, I don't know, it's like an hour and a half. And then you're like, oh, wow, there really were no gas stations that whole time. When I moved out to LA, I actually went with my dad because after he graduated high school, he had done a road trip with his friends and he liked the idea of coming along. And he wasn't as built for like the 12-hour days like Jeff was talking about. But I always pushed it a little bit longer. And then when we woke up in the morning, it was usually like, oh, wow, this place is really pretty. I'm like, yeah, because I picked the spot in South Dakota that seemed like it was going to look really nice. But what I did do was, okay, I don't think I'm ever going to be at this longitude or latitude again, really. So I went a little bit out of my way to go to Mount Rushmore. And it was like 2 hours out of my way, probably 2 hours each way. But I'm like, it's worth 4 hours to go and see something I've always wanted to see that I may never get to see again. And so far, I haven't been back. Heather's mom is, let's just say she's in her 60s. She's always wanted to go, still has never been. And I'm like, yeah, but those big stone heads, they sure are pretty cool. By the way, Jason Blair adds, I was born in Amarillo. So let's just say you've both definitely shit on Amarillo.
Amarillo.
Jason usually tried to keep it confined to the diapers when he was a wee.
I did have Starbucks napkins in the car that I was able to use. And then there's that thing of being like, I guess I'll just leave this here. And just a big steaming pile of shit. But it was like by a farm. It's like maybe it was a cow. I don't know. It could have been a wandering cow.
I've done worse in Burbank, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I theater to think you can make it home. You get like that popcorn tummy, and then you just go, I'm gonna hide out between two trash barrels on a nice Burbank street and just take a nice little steamer.
At least I'm pooping by the dumpster. That's helpful,
well,
right?
I definitely shit behind a dumpster in Hoboken, New Jersey. And I don't think anyone ever noticed. It's probably still there, in all honesty. I mean, and this was 20
It's an artifact
years
now.
Ago. Yeah, there's a plaque actually that goes with it. But fortunately,
part of Hoboken,
the crown jewel. Yeah,
yeah, that's actually how they decide a new mayor is. They sort through the local scat that is left all around. So I had a fun trip back east. and I'll talk about some of the friend stuff and whatever at some point. But let's talk show business. As I mentioned, I saw Don Jameson just last night. I was on his show on Compound Media, which is Anthony Cumia's show, and I think that I basically just have a few variations of screen grabs of me. If I'm not making Don laugh, it's all right, because clearly I'm making myself laugh. And really, I don't know, Jeff, isn't that just as important? As long as you make yourself laugh, right?
How did we make it
that what really
552 episodes if you couldn't make yourself laugh?
Thank you. I'm glad. I'm
the
glad
only audience that matters to myself.
I mean,
That's true.
it's true. I was
And
gonna
MJ
say I'm the
behind you
only
in the back.
one on every episode, except there is that one that I'm out on that you guys.
Oh, that's
were
right.
On without me. Yeah. You guys, you did some kind of like High Times cast. I forget what it was called.
Yeah.
That wasn't episode 420. We did that together. This
That's
was
right. It was
I think
before
I
that.
don't even think you guys were high. I think you just talked a lot about drugs. And
Yeah.
And by the way, I wanted to show our visual audience I was gonna say the magic of Hollywood, but I guess it's more the magic of podcasting and show business, because here I am with Don Jameson also in that same studio, and you'll notice it's just a lot of green screen. Everything in that studio is actually a green screen. So when you see
Whoa.
me talking, and the desks are
All
are
those
real.
walls?
He
Yeah,
doesn't
the
have
walls. Wow.
sweet brick walls with windows that go to nothing and pictures of Alice Cooper.
No.
That sucks.
Believe it or not, they don't, and that's his special. Nicely done noticing Alice there, by the way. I appreciate that. Let's give a shout out to Alice here on the podcast. But it's fun. I've done the show there in person before, and it's it's an interesting setup they have over there, for Compound Media, because that, for people that don't know, that's the company that was started by Anthony Cumia after he was of Opie and Anthony, which will come into Opie and Anthony sort of factor into some of the conversation. I got to know Don from him. I knew who he was. I liked that metal show that he used to do with Jim Florentine, Eddie Trunk, and all that. And by the way, I feel like I told Jason the truth about the Truth Fairy. I can't believe it. The next thing you're going to tell us is that Will isn't in a room with a grand piano over his shoulder.
It's
Nope.
actually Fraser's house, Fraser's apartment. So
Is
I actually
that,
am in Fraser's apartment.
Is that where they have tossed salad and scrambled eggs?
Depends on the day.
By the
Depends
way,
on what happened
has
the
the
night
new
before.
Frasier premiered yet? I remember.
No, I'm very nervous.
They were
but
recording
no.
it, and I was like, "Oh, look, you could be in the audience." And do you remember how you felt about that idea of being in the audience for the new Frasier? Will?
I want to say I told you I was like, it could be one of the greatest or the worst experience of my life, because if I'm sitting there live and what I'm seeing, I'm like, this is horrible. I'll feel trapped and like I'm in hell. And then I don't think it's one of those things that I'm so over these reboots, but like I'm gonna watch it just because. But I do feel I love the original enough that like it's not gonna ruin it. It's not gonna ruin Cheers.
No.
I can still then be like, you know what, I'll just watch it. Some people are like, oh, it ruined it. I'm like, that's no. But I am very scared. I think
Unless it's the red pill version of Frasier.
I mean, it's entirely possible that that was the project that Kelsey Grammer would like them to have presented.
what is that? What am I missing in that joke?
Red pilling?
Red pilling is
Like
like
the Matrix?
thing. Yeah, so it's this
Kind of,
idea that
yeah.
a lot of conservative media, whatever type people do to say, we're telling you the truth. You're
Oh,
getting
I see.
red pilled on the
Right.
truth.
Well,
of what's
yeah,
really
So they
happening.
stole it
Like,
from the Matrix to make it
there's-
about their fucking psycho
literally
shit.
stolen
Yeah.
from the Matrix.
There's people that feel at a certain point, Joe Rogan was red pilled, and then he says a lot of things they don't agree with, but then he's back to being red pilled.
Right.
It's you can bite down on that blue pill every once in a while.
Yeah.
Speaking
red
of
pill
which,
fully
this segment of the
digests?
Bladtcast is brought to you by Blue Chew. I really wish it was, because how great would that have been? It's not.
I'm hard right now.
Don't try to
Blue
use promo code Bladtcast. And I'm sorry, Will, I spoke over you.
Oh, I said that's okay. I said I'm hard right now. That's fine.
Well, let's see what I can do about that. Also, if you visit Compound Media in New York, I went to a diner with the one and only E-Rock himself, Eric Nagel, past guest on this show. and he liked my order of a club sandwich and French fries so much. He ordered exactly the same thing, and I love Eric. He was just on our Indiana Jones episode. But have you ever? And this is a non-gender thing. It's sort of a game that I do with my brother a lot of the time. But it got so like sometimes, like when my sister was off in college, I think, and my brother had moved out, I would go out to dinner with my parents. The two of them would order the same thing, and it was like, well, I wanted that. I can't just all three of us order something. I don't even like to order the same thing as my wife, except for the fact that, you know, we eat at the same 5 places with the kids and we kind of know what's good now. So let me ask you first, Jeff, do you put any thought at all into this, or you just eat what you want? And if somebody else gets the same thing as you, then clearly they have good taste.
I'd say nowadays I probably wouldn't care because I'm just going to eat what I like to eat. But
Fair.
That's definitely one of those, like, as a kid, it used to drive me absolutely insane where you go out to eat with my mom. She'd be like, what are you having? And I'd say what I'd chosen. She'd be like, that sounds good. And then she'd order before me. And I'd always be like, now I look like the copycat, but you are the copycat. And this is bullshit. As though it mattered what the waitress or waiter thought about our ordering. But yeah, definitely. Yeah. Used to be a little pet peeve.
Yeah. And with my brother, he's 5 years older than me. Actually, I had lunch with him when I was in New York, and he did years ago. It's just like, why don't you order first? And whatever I get, he's like, I'll get that too. So it's like, there's part of me that's like, oh, do I want to destroy my stomach? And like, can you put like ghost peppers on this, or, you know, some, you know, just
to
bathe
spite
it
him.
in, just bathe it in sriracha. Can you do that for me? Thanks.
That's the time that he goes, I'll have that, except for that sriracha.
Yeah,
you're just the one suffering.
But you don't want to be a reverse copycat and go like, yeah, me too. I'll take off that sriracha too.
What about you, Will? Do I spend too much time in my own head and I shouldn't worry about what other people at the table order, or is it a weird feeling sometimes?
I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, I like to try multiple things at a restaurant, unless it's, like you said, if it's a place I've been a bunch of times, like I know like sort of what I'm going to do or what I feel. But Casey and I, like when we go out, we usually like talk about stuff. It's like, what looks good? And there's a bunch of times where it's like, oh, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this too. And I'm like, all right, well, what's the second favorite? And then we'll just split these.
Yeah.
Or we each try bites. And because a lot of the times it's like, actually, you know what? Yours is better. And we'll switch. Or it's like, I'm glad I got this and you got that because you like yours more than this and I like mine more than yours. So, you know, we just trade.
That is essentially the nature of Heather and I go through a process of elimination. The night that we recanted on the Bladtcast, where we all met up at BJ's Steakhouse. It's not really steakhouse. I just didn't want to leave the word BJ out there. I did it. That's exactly what we did. I think it was like, oh yeah, that's the thing I want second most. So yeah, and sometimes we'll actually trade plates, but yeah, I wasn't planning on trading plates with E-Rock when I sat down with him. By the way, Jason Blair, original red-pilled celebrity accusation. Dennis Miller red-pilled on some things, but I was literally talking about Dennis last night with someone, and you know, he was always and continues to be very liberal on social issues. You know, so he, you may say that maybe that's why the radio show never quite took off, was because we're, you know, fans of Rush Limbaugh, we're ditto heads. We believe everything you believe, which is probably not a great way to go through life, regardless of the person that you're dittoing. And then there was nobody that listened to Dennis's show. I was like, yeah, I agree with him on everything. I was like, or maybe just listen because you thought it was funny, and because I was on it. But and Jason does point out that BJ's is a brew house, not a steakhouse.
I thought it was Blue House. BJ's Blue House.
You mean like Little Boy Blue? He needed the money. Is that what you're going for?
You blew yourself.
Yeah. See, Jeff and I are on the same page.
So the Fraser revival, it's going to be funnier than that.
But no one's going to be on it except Roz is going to be on it, right? The Fraser revival.
I do think she's going to recur. I don't think she's like series regular,
but no one else is like on it at all, right?
I would be, if it ends up going into a second season, which I feel like it's been so talked up, it's going to be one of those sitcoms like The Ranch on Netflix, where no matter how bad it is, they're like, it's getting a season 2 and 3 order because this specific part of the country, why give it enough views, that the other characters will have their cameos. But like, there's some garbage sitcoms that went on for years on streaming platforms that I was like, who the fuck is watching this?
Well,
And I'm
general,
worried that
who
Frasier's
likes 3-cam anymore? 3-cam laugh track is just there's I can't think of a single show that's any good anymore that has been attempted in 3-cam with a laugh track. Like it's the kiss of death to any modern show. It worked in its time. Like you can watch old sitcoms that were made in that way and it's like, okay, it is what it is. This is what it was always meant to be. But it's like nowadays making a black and white film and being like, I didn't know colored was an option. It's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. No, and I mean, and it,
like the artist, you're like, why aren't you fucking talking? This silent movie? When were you born?
Yeah, I think that, and Jason asked the question: is the resident over? Then maybe Daphne will be on. That's a great question. I don't know.
I had read that both she and David Hyde Pierce politely declined to be on the show, but that's my theory: is if it does go into a second season and there's enough money involved, they might show up. They might show up for an episode or two.
Well, I believe they threw money at Lilith, even though that's a Cheers character, but they feel like
she's on. She's a big character now,
right? Yeah. No, exactly. So, in any case, So I'm actually like trying to think of traditional sitcom presentation, and How I Met Your Mother is misleading because it looks like that, but it was definitely recorded with a laugh track because they did a lot of cutaways, like Family Guy. Really, they did a lot of cutaways and flashbacks and things, and it wasn't actually that kind of a show, Chuck Lorre continues to churn out shows that have that look and are produced in that way. I believe there's some now, but although Young Sheldon isn't done like that, I know because it's always on at Planet Fitness. I don't know about you, Will, but
I think you like that tweet of mine.
I always know what Young Sheldon's up to. Apparently, at some point, his dad's going to cheat on his mom because it's something that they established on Big Bang Theory. So I
that's
didn't
the
watch
series
that
finale. Either. Oh, it's hilarious! His dad finally happened. He cheated on his mom. She had a comment.
And we laughed our asses off.
I want to say that you liked an old tweet of mine when I was at the gym, and I said, I think I can add Young Sheldon to the list of shows I've seen every episode of without the sound on, including Supernatural and Two Broke Girls or some other bullshit.
I've seen a lot of Two Broke Girls.
Lots of Two Broke Girls on right now.
There were characters that got married on that show that Jennifer Coolidge. I had no idea that there was a wedding for that character. Garrett Morris stuck around that show a lot longer than I remembered. Yeah, I've seen a lot of I've seen more of these shows than shows I actively want to watch. I'm so far behind on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That's a show I'd like to watch, but boy, did I sure this morning see apparently Guy Fieri went over to the UK, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of a there's diners, drive-ins, and dives over there too. And
except it's called Diners, Drive-ins, and fucking Dives.
Oi,
it's me.
Diners, drive-ins, and dives. Oh,
yes.
Boy.
Pubs and other pubs.
pubs and more pubs.
Shit food, and some pretty nice Indian food actually over here. But that's
let's enjoy that. Well, something that they would enjoy there. While I was in New York, I went to McSorley's Ale House, which have either of you ever been to McSorley's when you visited New York City?
I have not, but they serve a proper bullshit German/Czech pint.
Yeah, you see all that foam on top.
Yeah,
but they serve drinks in rounds, and you have to keep up. And if you slow down, they will ask you to give up the table for someone who deserves to sit. They won't kick you out, but you have to stand and drink because you're drinking too slow. So basically, you drink the round. There's four. Well, there's two per person. I was only there with one other person. And so they put down the 4 beers, and you are expected to drink them in a timely fashion, because then the guy comes back and he puts down 4 more. If you don't want the 4 more, you can say, no, we're done. And then he gives you the bill and then you leave. But so I believe, let's just say 3 rounds came. But I was with my friend Zoe, who is a past guest here on the Bladtcast. And let's just say that of each of these rounds of 4, and keep in mind how much foam there is, I had about 3.5 of each time they came by. So I think she had like a beer and then some, and I had like 11. But that's the beauty of New York. it's the beauty of New York. I didn't have to drive anywhere when I'm in New York City. You know,
That's right.
The
Yeah.
road trip part is later, but when I'm there, it's like, oh, I just had to take the subway. I was, my friend Sarah was kind enough to have me stay at, she was out of town. I stayed in Woodside, Queens, which was lovely. And it was great to have like an apartment. I didn't have to worry about how late I was coming back to. Yeah, I may have had a couple of drinks, Will. If you live in New York, in the New York area long enough, Will, we should try and record a podcast at McSorley's Ale House. Would you drive down for that, Jeff?
I just might.
Okay, that's the right answer. Because I know that means it's like there's no way I'm doing that. But I appreciate that you would, for the sake of the show, you would pretend you'd consider.
To be honest, I've been trying to be more open to like going places and doing things since I moved, because I had gotten a little bit agoraphobic, and so it's like moving into this new house, I'm trying to make some changes. So I honestly think there is an actual possibility I might go down to New York and make a trip to make a visit or whatever, do something if I had a good reason to do it.
Wow, look at how much foam is on these beers. I mean, doesn't that seem like it's worth it, Jeff?
That seems like it's going to make me sick so fast. I hate foamy beers. It's the worst.
I think every time I got a beer in Prague and Berlin, I was like, can you please take this? Can you do this right? I just can't. What am I paying you for? I'm not paying you for half. You say it's a pint. This is not a pint. This is a half pint.
Hey, Will, do you think that it's possible that they just don't know the concept of going into a beer?
Right, exactly.
Aren't they also like session brews? So it's like lower alcohol content.
Yeah,
than
everything's like
beers
4 or 5%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which means you can plow through, twice as many.
I remember when I was doing the semester abroad, one of the first places we went was Amsterdam, and we hadn't eaten all day, and we went to this like pizza place because there's pizza places everywhere, and we're waiting for the pizza, and in the meantime I ordered like the giant liter of beer. So I'm just like, chugging down the beer, just waiting for my pizza, and the owner of the restaurant comes and he's like, hey guys, I don't know what nationality he was, but he had like a not Dutch accent. And he was like, hey, guys, I'm thinking of starting a new place called Big Tits. Because it's Amsterdam, so it's like all full of that kind of stuff. And I just kept going, and I was just drunk. I just kept going, Tig Bitties, call it Tig Bitties. And he's like, no, I don't. What is it? And I was like, Tig Bitties, just call it
What
Tig
is
Bitties.
Tig Bitty?
He hated it. I wouldn't shut up about it to be like, Tig Bitties. Take it, because I was just getting hammered from the only having drunk this like liter of beer with no food in my stomach yet.
But it's like Dick's Last Resort. I think Tig Bitties is a great idea. Dick's
Last Resort.
I think
great idea.
It's
last time I was in Vegas. I stayed at I stayed at the Excalibur, and I went to the biggest restaurant in the Excalibur Hotel and Casino was a Dick's Last Resort, and I was like, well. We'll go back to Dick's, I guess, because we don't want to walk very far. So I'd never been to a Dick's Last Resort in my life, and I spent 3 days inside a Dick's Last Resort
in San Diego. Yeah, I've been to that one. Yeah.
It's very, and Christian, I don't mean this for you because you're not this kind of dad. It's like my dad. Like it's that kind of dad vibe, like a dad now in their 60s who's like, I got this shirt, I ate at Dick's, like, it's a little like Tommy Bahama, Jimmy Buffett kind of vibe. And it's like, it's appropriate to just be drunk all the time. My kids don't care. I'm retired. It's weird. It's a very strange place.
Yeah, I once went and saw this San Diego-based band, Rocket from the Crypt. They played at the Dick's Last Resort in the Gaslamp district. There's like a courtyard. It's right by Petco Park in San Diego. And Tim in San Diego knows exactly what we're talking about. See, he's been to Dick's. And his stage name is Speedo, the lead singer of Rock from the Crypt, and he just kept like making up like the most outrageous, inappropriate double entendres, and like don't forget it's full penetration night here tonight at Dick's Last Resort. Just that's the one I remember, but it was like a whole night filled of that. It's like and it's such a wildly inappropriate place. And Cut of the Jib says they're all a bunch of dicks over there. They put funny hats on you. They abuse you. It sounds like the Renaissance Festival, in all honesty. But yeah, so there's always fun to be had on a nice road trip like that. But a big part of why I spent as much time in New York as I did is I drove from New York City. This is the 5-hour drive that I talk about, and I did go to Rochester, New York, which I'll get into. Will won't get the full impact of the whole story because Will obviously you're welcome to return after you depart, but I know you do have other things to do today. But I do want to shout out DeBella's Italian Market in Rochester. One of the 5 best Italian sandwiches I've ever had in my life. It's up there with the Godmother from Santa Monica, Bay Cities. I had to think of the name of the place. So it was, I was impressed. Now, there's apparently a chain sandwich shop just called DeBella's. That is not as good. This was the place that I was really glad that I went to. And I talked about going to an AMC movie theater. And there's nothing more suburban upstate New York than just the standalone AMC movie theater there outside of Rochester.
Built into an old furniture store or whatever the fuck that used to be.
The furniture store is across the street, but yeah, you're not entirely wrong about that. And Jason Blair knows what's important in that part of the state is Wegmans, the supermarket. I don't know if Jeff, have you ever lived anywhere where Wegmans is the supermarket?
Yeah, we have Wegmans out here. There's a Wegmans. We used to get groceries from Wegmans when I was living in Dedham.
Yeah, my friend John, who I was part of my trip there, he went to Cornell, and it was sort of like the thing that they had to do there was to go hang out at Wegmans at night, because Ithaca, New York, is one of those towns where if you're not old enough to drink, you're not drinking. So I mean, you could go to a frat party or something. But
my stepdad went to Cornell, but he's an engineer. So the stories he tell are like, so my buddy, we like hooked up his horn to his ignition. So when he tried to start his car, it just made the horn go endlessly. It's just like, good times in the 50s.
Sounds pretty great to me. I don't know what you're talking about, Jeff. That's just one of those agree to disagree.
Yeah, you can hook my horn up to my ignition.
Hey now. At Dick's last resort.
But
that would be my last resort. Yeah.
But let's not have the remix to Ignition because we don't live in an age where we can listen to that anymore.
We don't.
And part of what I was doing up in Rochester, I was in studio for Who Are These Podcasts, a show that I've referenced a number of times here on this podcast. And this is the downstairs wood paneling where Carl, producer Chris, and regular guests on that show are. And I went around and I took some pictures of the wood paneling. So now when I'm on remotely in the future, I have a backdrop that I can put behind me so that I can just pretend. And it actually worked. People were like, what? Carl, is he blink twice if Christian won't leave your house? So it worked. But Carl was kind enough to share his studio, open up his home to me, and I actually spent the night there. But not only that, he shared the stage with me. So Carl Hamburger has a instrumental band called the Isotopes, and they had a show while I was there, and that the show that they were doing is called Isotopioke. So what they do for Isotopioke is that instead of always just playing instrumental songs, they have guest vocalists, and they invited me to do something, and Carl, he texted me. It was actually while my son was passed out sleeping during Transformers Rise of the Beast or whatever that movie was called that we talked about recently.
For Felix, it was Rise of the Sleeps.
It was indeed Rise of the Sleeps. Which
Transformers Snorlax?
So Carl asks me, and he says, do you sing? And you guys have been to karaoke with me. And I responded, loudly, enthusiastically, but not well. And Carl's response was, "Great, you'll fit right in." So asked to sing with a live band, I'm not going to say no. I don't know what you guys would do. Will, perhaps you would handle this differently. Jeff, I don't quite know where you would come down, but for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. In all honesty, I felt like it wasn't a tough sell for me. Is what I'm really getting at. And I have not watched any of my performance, but I'll share a little with each of you as long as I can get the audio to play, because you guys know me well enough. You can tell that I'm distracted as I'm trying to get the damn video to open, but I do have it in another window now. And you guys have seen me do karaoke enough. Do you want to guess what song I sang?
Surrender.
Ignition.
Oh, the remix to Ignition.
Remix to Ignition.
No, it is indeed Surrender by Cheap Trick.
Yeah. Damn, I know your karaoke choices.
You do, and it's been too long, by the way, since we've.
It has been a long time.
Night. I've done Max Karaoke back in Little Tokyo has finally reopened. It had closed pre-pandemic, and then it just looked like one of those things that wasn't going to survive the pandemic. But oh no, Max was back. And I know Will has to go, and I sort of rushed through some of this story because I wanted to send Will off with a little bit of this, and what are the odds that he's going to be able to both see it and listen to it? Jeff, do you want to put any money down if I can successfully play this video and audio?
I'd say I'll give 3,001 odds
that it works.
That it doesn't work.
Oh, damn it. I was like, oh, thanks, Jeff. Oh, wait a minute.
Son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch. Well, I feel like you guys see it now. And that's the important part.
I do
right?
see it.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. I'd lose.
Oh.
Now I can't hear you.
Yes, she told me I need girls like you. She also told me stay away, don't get I know what your friends. Just the other day I had a soldier falling home. Coming down the Asian jump that's going around. It's alright.
The first spot where I missed it. Yeah.
Surrender. You should consider Heaven Tonight as your new Cheap Trick song of choice.
That band's going to hire you to be their lead singer. You're up next.
That's the best part, is that they don't have a lead singer because they're an instrumental band. And the first verse, I feel, went the best. I might have lost my place towards the end, but that's the best thing about that song. Is you get to that part where you're like, we're all right. We're all right. So it worked out in the end.
I love live band karaoke. I've never done that before, actually.
They were doing that when Kiss had their residency in Vegas back in 2014. They were doing it in the parking lot at Kiss Mini Golf across from what was then the Hard Rock Hotel. But I guess the list was too long. And also, having done that now, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm glad I didn't get up and do. But it was fun. People were very nice. Producer Chris, who is the regular producer / co-host, sidekick, second banana. I don't know. It's a sidekick. I feel like I can use that word. He just in the most recent episode, they were playing a parody song someone sent in, and it was atonal and the music wasn't synced up. And Chris said, "Did Christian Blatt send this in?" And I had to admit, it was really funny. So shout out to producer Chris and Carl and all the guys in the Isotopes. It was a beautiful venue. It was this outdoor stage. It was covered. We had a tent overhead because it was threatening to rain. It never did. Somewhere like Rochester, New York is beautiful if you go in June. I know people who went in February and it was like literally the coldest weekend of the year. They did an event up there. But anyway, Will, I do want to let you go for your meeting. You are welcome to return, but you are not required to return. We're happy to see you. If you want to come back, I'll tell a little bit more about some of my travels and my tales. But it seems like this is not going to be the episode where all three of us talk about Fall Out Boy's sequel to We Didn't Start the Fire. But the gist of it from your text was you were like, oh, it's okay. You were fine with it.
It's all right.
Yeah,
it's all right.
It's all right. It's
all right. Yeah, exactly.
We're just a little
but
weird.
Since I brought it up, the most recent episode of Shitty Song of the Week now available, where I talk about that song for more than an hour. But you might appreciate the other song in that episode. I can't remember if I talked about this when we mentioned it. Danny Aiello did an answer record to Madonna's Papa Don't Preach because he's in the video for that. And he didn't like working with Madonna. So he decided he was going to fix her. And he did a song that like Papa Just Wants What's Best for You or something.
Got it.
You might enjoy that. You might enjoy checking out Papa.
Just want to,
Yeah, Papa just wants to have fun. Anyway, Will Sterling _ Twitter, Instagram, Threads.
Yeah, all that.
Rated R. And if we don't see you again, we'll see you soon here on the Bladtcast. We always appreciate you making time to be part of Bladtcast Nation.
Absolutely. I'm an original founding member. Come on. Okay, bye.
That's right. I mean, look, I'm sorry, Jeff. There's only one original founding member here on the show, but as I required, as I had Farad Muhammad record in the intro for some of these episodes, Will is listed as a founding member of the Bladtcast, but you are fan favorite. Which one would you rather be? Would you rather be a fan favorite or a founding member?
I'd rather be a fan favorite because I think of myself like Sarah Chalk on Roseanne. I'm the second Becky, but I'm the far superior one.
You're the way better Becky. I mean, let's just a couple of fellas here now. Which Becky would you rather fuck? But anyway, I just think it was important. And Jason Blair says, Threads, another social for me to not be on. Yeah, Jason, I loved Jason keeping his Twitter around so that I could tag him when he would be a guest on the show, like every year and a half, and he would tweet like one other time, and it would be fun to see how many tweets he had since the last time he was on. But I think that it's I guess it was a waste, and you're not on Twitter anymore, and Do-Ray Jeff isn't even on Twitter anymore. So
I think they're all gone. I think I deleted them when it was like I'm never going back because I think that was around when Elon Musk was, getting his Musk all over Twitter. I was just like, I don't see a path back from here.
Yeah, no, definitely. By the way, earlier, Cut of the Jib said, Christian, tell Dennis to get back to podcasting. Cut of the Jib, I don't think you understand how my relationship with Dennis has worked in the almost 20 years that I've known him. I don't tell him to do anything, ever. I've suggested things a couple of times. About half of those times he listened. So, it's just kind of the way it works. But I do have lunch with him a couple of times a year. Salman and I go up there. We have fun. We laugh our asses off. And, there's nobody happier to be out of show business than Dennis Miller, I think. So, but in any case, so I wanted to try it because I talk a lot about this show that I've been on as a guest a number of times, and it's been kind of a big platform for me. And there's another thing that I can talk a little bit more about because Carl's talked about it on his show, but Carl Hamburger, the host of Who Are These Podcasts, he and I at some point soon are going to do a show that'll either be called Who Are These Broadcasters or Who Are These Broadcasts, because then it fits the rhythm of Who Are These Podcasts, and we'll be playing clips of newscasters, sportscasters, weathercasters, just making fools of themselves. And the whole goal in it is that it will feature political clips of, like your Tucker Carlson's, but it's like only funny if you also have the Young Turks guy I don't even know how you say his name, you know? So it's like, you can have the political stuff, but you're like, it's here for laughs. We're just here to laugh. Look how dumb this one is. Look how dumb they are. Can we laugh at everything? And it's probably not the way the show's going to work. You know, you're going to hate a lot of people a lot of the time. But so that's something that I have in the works. And hopefully sometime this fall was one of the reasons why I drove like 10 hours between there and back to as fun as it was to sing Surrender. And I don't know how fun it was to listen to, but it was fun for me. And that's all that really matters. Yeah. And Jason Blair is trying to help me. Cenk Uygur, not the way it's spelled. That's the Young Turks guy. But other than me mentioning it periodically, Jeff, do you know anything about this podcast called Who Are These Podcasts?
I do not.
So
I don't even listen to the podcasts I work on. So.
By the way, I'm with you. I'm with you. But the idea for it was fairly simple. You know, he started it with a friend, and in that basement where he has the studio with like some nice equipment now, they used to use like basically what I have here, a Blue Yeti, and they would put it on the directional, and they would all stand at the bar in his basement and just talk into it, and then like add clips, I think is the way that it worked. And the idea is on Opie and Anthony, there's those names again. They used to have a bit called Jocktober. Sam Roberts, who's gone on to basically host that show with Jim Norton, they would take clips from morning radio because Opie and Anthony were on satellite, but also on broadcast radio. And they would just take jocks, as in disc jockeys, and play shows from around the country and just play clips and just mercilessly rag on them. And so people who were doing the radio shows, you know, all of a sudden, like, wait, why do we have like 6,000 comments on our Facebook thread all of a sudden? And, you know, then people started to catch on because it was a big enough show that eventually you could find out what was going on. But when that show ended, the concept of Jocktober kind of passed on. So Carl thought it was a fun idea to do for podcasts. And what he always tries to do is, you know, be reasonably lighthearted and good natured. It's more of like a roast. I had mentioned, what was it, episode 523 of this podcast? I had Carl on to play clips that he selected from episode 1 of the Bladtcast. And it's not strong. People can go back and listen. At the end of the audio version for that episode, I put the entire Bladtcast 1 because I thought it would be important for people to hear it. And I'll just say that subscriptions didn't go up after I did that. But, you know, and it's, you know, look, I think it's a good enough idea. People write back to Carl and they're mad, and he's like, it's fine. You know, if you want to, you know, he doesn't like tag the podcast, like when he posts the link, which is probably the mistake I would have made. Like, hey, at Fallout Boy, we make fun of your shitty song on Shitty Song of the Week. That's kind of how I would probably do it. But you know, people find out, like listeners of other shows, and sometimes they're upset, sometimes they're angry, sometimes they take it in good fun. This guy Dick Masterson, who has a big podcast, Carl made fun of him years ago, and he thought it was hysterical. And now those two shows like do live events together and stuff. So you know, not everybody finds it funny. You definitely have to have a thick skin, but Carl focuses on people who have been in the media and should know better a lot of time, like Greg Opie Hughes of Opie and Anthony, who is not a good broadcaster. Stuttering John Melendez from the Howard Stern Show, who is not a good broadcaster. There's a lot of drama in that world now that you have to really want to be in on it to know that. But I just come on. I tend to, the last couple times I've been on, tell me what you think of this idea for a podcast that I pulled clips from, Jeff. It's called Rude Tales of Magic. It is a group of comedians improvisational comedians playing a role-playing game, Dungeons and Dragons. I think they don't say the name because it's a brand name. And they improvise a story from week to week, making jokes and playing a bunch of different characters. What do you think would be the number one rule if that was the way that you were going to try and do a podcast, Jeff, as somebody who's worked in podcasting and radio for such a long time?
I don't even know.
Well, what I would do is record it the way that they record it, but then edit out the stumbling and the stammering and the ums and the the things that don't go anywhere. And you could really tighten it up, and it's probably going to be fun. Still not my cup of tea, but no, they leave it all in, and it's just like
I hate so many people are into that. So many.
Yeah.
There was a shitty cooking show I worked on for this guy who was a total dick. I won't mention him by name because he still does a ton of cooking shows. He's like on TV. Natasha. No, close.
No,
I'll just say his last name.
Mean,
his last name is a synonym for fire. Anyways, he was just, first of all, he annoyed me because he was like one of those guys where it's like he's married. He was late 40s, maybe when I was working with him. I don't really know exactly how old he was, but it was like too old to dress like he was a fuckboy. Like literally with like the hat on and had the nice booth, and he'd be talking about like Twitch and wearing Jordans or something. And I'm like, dude, you're a 5'7" white guy cook. Why are you acting like you're this like young hip hop kid? It just drove me crazy because he's just
is it like the Steve Buscemi meme where he's got the backwards hat?
Yes.
And he's like, hello, fellow children.
Well, I would say that was more Norm Pattis, but this was like a younger version of that.
By the way, R.I.P.
But yeah, it had a very similar feel to it where I was always just like, oh my God.
And I'm sorry, Jeff, I'm going to interrupt you again because it's only the two of us. Because of the person we're just talking about, what do you think the P would stand for in R.I.P.? What do you think he would like to rest in?
Courtside seats, Lakers.
I'm sorry. Sometimes you got to make jokes for yourself. Okay. We were talking about, you do 552 episodes. You got to make yourself laugh sometimes. All right. Look, just look at Fozzie and Kermit. All right. If you're not enjoying what I'm talking about. Anyway, I want to let you finish your point about the chef, but just Norm Pattis, R.I.P. Something in my head. Yeah. R.I.P. Rest in power. Rest in power.
In Montecito, California.
What are you going to do? Show me your gun, Norm? Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, so yeah, just working with the chef. He also did that thing where he would have these recordings where it's like him going to answer the door for the guests. And he was like, leave it in. And I'm like, leave it in? This is fucking terrible. Nobody wants to hear you go answer the door. Nobody wants to hear, like, no, leave it in, where it's me being like, yeah, we're just going to say whatever you want. Just do whatever. We'll just let it flow. Let it go. And then starting the podcast, he's like, yeah, leave all that in, the beginning stuff. I'm like, or, and hear me out, I could cut it right up until before you start the actual show. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about that? And I mean, I guess that the idea, if you're doing an improvisational show, part of it when you're on the stage is you're watching them work it out. But you know what the best part of improvisational comedy is? When the idea comes to them right away. And they get right into the thing, and it's really funny. It's why, like, the Upright Citizens Brigade gang who started it were good at it, and so it was fun to watch. You know, the people who came out of Second City were good at it. You know, so yeah, bad improv. There's not much time for.
Nothing more painful.
Yeah, we did I pride myself on having found the show that multiple like regular listeners of Who Are These Podcasts said was the worst podcast that they'd ever featured on the show. Just because the hosts were so annoying. It's called Hey Riddle Riddle. So these three improvisational comedians in Chicago get together with a riddle book, and then they try to solve the riddles, and then they make each other act out these scenes based on the riddles. And I've listened to 3 full episodes, and it's never funny, but they do live shows. They have a huge number of Patreon subscribers. So it's like, I don't feel bad at all. You know, I'm just saying, I think these people suck and aren't funny. I try to say it more clever than that. Carl certainly does, and whoever else might be on with us. But it's if there was ever a show that was made for me, it might be that one. So it's fun to tackle, and that's why I thought like the least I could do was for our 10th anniversary, do that with the first episode of the Bladtcast. And Jeff, you might enjoy the first episode of the Bladtcast because you don't have to hear yourself on it. You're just going to hear me. Here's the biggest problem with the first episode of the Bladtcast. It's just me talking for like the first 9 minutes. Nice. I don't talk to the guys yet. I don't bring them in until a little later.
I miss when I first started on the Dennis Miller Show, and you guys were doing your doing the podcast, and I was not that I don't miss not being a part of it. That's not the point of the story, but I wasn't a part of it, so I was just hearing you guys.
Just listening.
I'd be working. Well, I'd be working on the board or doing something like cutting a promo or something I had to do extra after the show, and then you guys would be recording. And it's like you had little segments for each of the guys, right? You had like Tebow time for Dave, and you had
and
like
we had guy talk
corner,
Coltrane corner. Yeah.
And then it was, I guess I don't remember specifically having some, I guess Nerd Talk was for
Nerd Talk. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was interesting where it was like you had to have your like special segments for everybody to have their part of the podcast that they were actually interested in talking to you about.
It became more fun when we would just all sit in the studio and David would talk to us more. But look, I'm going to let you guess about what the approach was to creating the podcast and how the first segment became Coltrane's Corner. And then we would do the Nerd Talk. But then it turned out like, oh, these guys liked the same nerd stuff. And then you were a way bigger nerd than Bujenski. And I mean that as a compliment. You know how I mean it. I mean that as a compliment. I'm like, oh, Jeff's one of us. Bujenski was not one of us. So he would mostly make fun of us. And that's why he got 1 minute of Tebow time. And that was the joke of Tebow time, was that no matter where he was in his presentation, after 1 minute, it was over. To varying degrees. But just yeah, like it was basically it was basically done in the way it was, so that not everybody had to stay as long. But yes, the engineer did always have to stay. But I don't know. I think that it was really fun, and we had those resources available to us to do that in a nice studio, and probably should have done more with it. Probably should have tried to have guests on. I think the first guest was Chris Claremont, the X-Men writer, like on the phone in Bladtcast number 39. At some point but we would do what we call DMZ spotlights. We would have members from the message board who were regular posters, and some of them were callers. We would have them on as guests, because my thinking was, when the Bladtcast started, it was on the Dennis Miller Radio website. So I was like, well, the people on the message board are the ones I could try to get to listen. And what if they think that, like, oh, your friend is on, and we'll talk to them? I don't know. What's my excuse? 9 years later, I got nothing. I literally, but it's fun. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, you have to you have to want to live in a space where you're listening to content because it's bad. And typically, like, I don't hate watch anything, but I feel like, if I'm creating content, and they call it transformative content, when you take somebody's copywritten material and you use it without their authorization, you're using it to make fun of it. There's a lot of this being discussed on the internet right now. What's okay? So people will stream snipe other people's live streams and just comment on it and make fun of it. But that is not entirely legal. So, you get into a lot of these conversations, but there's still a place for good old fashioned audio podcasts, even though, we do this one visually as well. But the stuff you work on, we don't need to name any shows, but is it strictly audio, or are you doing audio and video now?
They've only kept me really with the audio stuff. I think because that's what I was already doing when they started. Because at Podcast One, their video implementation was always dog shit. Like, they would have to have somebody go in. They tried having some 3D camera that never worked, that they was there when I first started, that no one ever used. And then it was more like when there was actually decent guests or a decent show or something, then you'd have like whoever the media or marketing person would come in with a camera and shoot a video or take some pictures or something. But it was mostly just audio. I know now they're doing a lot more, but I think that's because they've actually brought in decent people for video editing and set up like decent cameras.
It's a different skill set. I think that your mind works the same. I've only done very short video editing, but it's like, you isolate clips in the same way and all that. And Tim Salmon does point out that he was on the Bladtcast a couple of times. Yeah, that's right. You were. And we were glad you were. And we talked music with Tim a few times. We have fun. That's all we're looking to do. But yeah, I think that what works for podcasting is when you do both. When audio is an option, that helps. I think that's one audience, at least for the show that I've been doing for 10 years. And we added the video, and it's like some of the people who always listened, well, they're the people who always watch. But I think for the most part, the majority of your video audience is looking for video content. The majority of your audio audience is looking for audio content, so I think that that's how it works. And Tim's letting me know he's waiting for the residuals. Keep waiting. Don't worry. You'll get 1/10 of what Jeff has gotten paid, which I guess means he'll get like a quarter sleeve of a Bladtcast t-shirt. I don't know. Maybe I gave you a mug. Did I give you a mug, Jeff? I hope I gave you a mug.
I think I had a mug. I don't know where it is now.
It's
but
probably
I had
broke.
I had the shirt and I tried to put it on for today, but it doesn't fit so well anymore.
Oh, I thought you started fapping. I was like, oh, okay.
Just starting to no.
You just needed to. I was like, yeah. He's like, I used it to wipe up my precious seed.
It's solid now. I can frame it because it's hard as a rock.
Yeah, you might need to find an industrial strength nail to put through it. When I was talking about Rochester earlier, I forgot to shout out co-host of Subreddit Surfing, the other host being Cardiff Electric, the animated talking potato we talked about recently. But Vinny Paulino bought me breakfast before I went to Carl's house for Who Are These Podcasts? And Vinny and Carl do a different show called The Creep Off, which makes fun of true crime podcasts and serial killers and things like that. But it is the only podcast where both hosts have bought me corned beef hash in Rochester on different days. So it's a distinction that I think will take the Creep Off into the record books. So I don't know. I've got things cooking. As I said, this possible show with Carl. I'll certainly tell people in the Bladtcast when that's happening, and the other thing will be exciting if it can get off the ground. All I can say is if you saw me talk about the people I was with last night, it ties into that. So hopefully there's something soon. How's everything going over at the home, Jeff?
Good. We actually just had mini splits installed yesterday. So that's like instead of central AC, they kind of install those up on the wall AC units. And then there's like a central condenser outside. So it's been like 90 out here. So it's nice and cool in the house, like back down to 70s. Mary's been dying. I don't know if you could see her behind me getting comfy.
I see her. Yeah. It's it was like one of those like thump down. Yeah, one of those. Yeah.
She likes her bed's never comfy enough, so she just starts scratching at it. She'll start scratching at the carpet because she's like, no, it's not soft enough.
I got in my car yesterday afternoon, and it told me, and when your car sits out in the sun, the thermometer's a little off. But when I sat down, it told me it was 107. So it's a brisk afternoon in Burbank, California. Well, because we teased it last week, there's other parts of my trip. I hope to have our friend Z on, and we'll talk about some of the things that she and I did. We were together like 3 hours. That was it. That's all she had for me. And I didn't want to waste one of them podcasting, but I made her promise that she would record a future podcast with me. But I've been talking so much about Fall Out Boy's We Didn't Start the Fire. And Jeff, when we brought it up on the past episode, you didn't even know it was a thing, right?
I didn't realize. I also was like, when you brought it up, I was like, oh, did this come out a while ago? So when I looked it up, I was like, oh, it just came out like last month. Yeah, it's stupid. Why? I would never have looked this up. I don't check out Fall Out Boy music.
No,
it's like, a new Fall Out Boy song. I don't know who the Fall Out Boys are.
I was aware of it because people were goofing on it. And Brandon, who's the host of Shitty Song of the Week, he was on Who Are These Podcasts, and right before I popped in with a groundbreaking report on comedian Ray DeVito, they were trying to remember who did a new version of it. And so it was like, right at the perfect time, I'm like, oh yeah, it's by Fall Out Boy and it's terrible. And they were like, oh, well, if it's by Fall Out Boy, of course it's terrible. And so Will was coming from a different place. Will likes Fall Out Boy. Now, the first concert I went to, after the world started to let us try to have fun again with concerts, was at Dodger Stadium. It was a tour that I always hated the name of, the Hella Mega Tour, where the two sandwich ends were Weezer and Green Day, two bands I like very much. Mm-hmm. The impossible meat in the middle was Fall Out Boy, who I didn't really know that much. And then I heard those songs. I'm like, oh, I've heard this at a sporting game, a sporting match. I've heard this at a sporting game. I just wanted to say game and somehow sporting got in there. So then I just sounded like a dum-dum. Anyway, so it's like, oh yeah, I've heard this song for this. I don't like these songs, but I've heard them. Okay. I kind of get how they're successful. And the pandemic was a crazy time. I never wished COVID on anyone, but I was jealous of friends who went to see this tour at Citi Field in Queens. Because someone in the Fall Out Boy camp had tested positive for COVID-19. So they dropped off of that date. So it was Weezer and Green Day, which is nice. Like, I wish I'd gone to that one. But anyway, so I've seen Fall Out Boy. I gave them a chance because I didn't want to wait in the t-shirt line. The t-shirt line was so long and the merch wasn't great. So I was like, I'll sit and watch this band. And I gave them a fair shake. And I didn't think that they were bad per se. I didn't think they were great. They weren't my cup of tea. But then I heard this song, and I don't want to get this video. This video is not getting struck for my rendition of Surrender, but I feel like if I play the Fall Out Boy, We Didn't Start the Fire, especially from their official channel, we might. So I'll put a little snippet of it at the end for the audio version, but I don't want to play any of it. So you'll either have to pause the show and go listen to some, or you'll take our word for it. But so Jeff, I put this on your radar. Mm-hmm. Do you appreciate that I put this on your radar? Are you glad that you've heard Fall Out Boy's sequel to We Didn't Start the Fire?
I'm glad that, well, no, I'm not particularly, but I would also say I'm happy to have had the opportunity because I learned some interesting things that I didn't know about the original song. So
that while people have certainly respectfully been critical of the Billy Joel version of We Didn't Start the Fire,
including Billy Joel himself.
Yes. But the fact of the matter is that when you put the two songs side by side, there's a literal rhyme. There's a literal reason. He chronologically goes through, I guess it was the previous 40 years or
it's 40 years because it was after his 40th birthday that he decided to write the song, and it just so happened to coincide with the whole Cold War.
Yeah, so 49 to 89. Because I remember that song being new. I thought it was kind of cool. I liked the video. As I talked about on Shitty Song of the Week, I got 110 on a extra credit assignment because I got extra points because I researched everything that was in the song. But the teacher didn't realize that in our local paper, like the Sunday before, there was an article that listed what everything was. So I'm like, but to be fair, I'm the only kid in my class who did that, who like knew. And it was like, yeah, it was just stating facts. I was just dropping knowledge back in the 8th grade.
Dropping knowledge, red pill in your whole class.
Yeah, man. Everybody was fucking red pilled back in 89. And I don't think it's a bad song. The first couple times I saw Billy Joel, he didn't do it, and I'm like, kind of want to hear We Didn't Start the Fire. And I did see it. I was more disappointed he didn't do Uptown Girl. Finally got to see that as well. So I pretty much don't need to see Billy Joel again because he doesn't make new music. I've seen him like 3 times. I got the songs in that I want. But I think that song is fine. And objectively, even if you don't like it, you're like, okay, I can see how it works. Mm-hmm. Fall Out Boy was just like, okay, Billy Joel, we see what you did, and we just don't give a shit about any of it. We're just going to put a bunch of stuff together in a blender. And I talked about how it was like he wrote a draft of the song. I guess that guy's name is Pete Wentz. He wrote a draft of the song on his on his iPhone, and then he accidentally deleted the notes for the final version. So he still had the draft though. So he's like, we'll just use that. Mm-hmm. Or it was like magnet poetry. You know, you have on the fridge the different words. So he had like the events that they wanted to cover. And I think that basically, you know, they just sort of were like, they looked at the fridge and they were like, yeah, that's good. We'll just leave it like that. Jason Blair is giving us some information. The lyrics inset to the CD album of Stormfront listed the years each lyric was referring to. I remember because I had the CD. Humble brag. I had the cassette. And it actually made me look up stuff from history to know what he was talking about. Charles de Gaulle, Bernie Getz. Bernie Getz I remembered because I lived in New York. So that's kind of the difference, is knowing that sort of a thing. But in any case, I think that you know, that song works in a way. And if anybody was going to do a sequel to We Didn't Start the Fire, I feel like it should probably have been Billy Joel, you know. But you know,
Well,
these guys decided to do it.
He was asked to do a sequel. He said he didn't want to. He was like, I didn't think the melody of the first one was that good, so I don't need to do that ever again.
I don't need to do it again. Yeah, exactly. So, what are some of the thoughts you had? And I'm really going to step away for a second because I think my in-laws are downstairs. I just heard the doorbell ring, and but I want to hear your thoughts. I think maybe I'll just why don't you tell me, and we'll wrap things up pretty soon. They have a key; they can let themselves in. Okay.
Well, first and foremost, I don't know the Fallout Boys' names, so that just like lets you know I'm aware
the Fallout
of their
Boys
music.
with a Z. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm aware of them. I'm aware of their music. I don't hate it, but it's just not necessarily my cup of tea. So I feel like it's one of those things where if you don't really like a band, of course you're not going to like their music. The lyrics not being in chronological order just seems like a huge, like, that's kind of the point. That was like kind of the point of the original song. So what you're doing now is just like an ADD, like reciting of things that randomly came to your mind.
Yeah, it's like when they show you those ink blots. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you see this? Captain Planet, okay? Pokemon.
Tamagotchi.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is missing from the song.
Yeah, because it's a bullshit song. That was like one of the first things I thought was like some of the included choices were pretty weak. Like you probably could have done way better. And a lot of them seem way more recent. And if you think about it, it has not been 40 years since 1989. It's what, like 25?
30,
no,
34.
35. 34.
Yeah, so 34 years since 1989. Yeah.
So what the fuck is the point? What a random number. It makes sense for somebody who's just turned 40 to like to whatever, go over their previous 40 years, but just being like 34 years. I'm not 34 years old, but the last 34 years since that other song came out, here's some other random things that we thought about.
And
what's the point of the song? Why
there are plenty of pop culture references in the Billy Joel version. It's just some of these seem less significant. And I have highlighted anytime that I start talking about the song, I point out right away that the first lyrics are Captain Planet. And I'm just like, how is that your starting point? Because it goes Captain Planet, Arab Spring, LA riots, Rodney King, which, by the way, that's redundant that you're talking about. I know the LA riots were caused by Rodney King, but yeah, exactly. So you've got that. You know, there's things that definitely would belong in anybody writing a song like this, like the Oklahoma City bomb.
Sure. But how about Firefest?
Yeah,
which it's like I
only know about Firefest because there were competing documentaries on Netflix and Hulu, you know, and you knew what kind of person you were dealing with when you found out which one they watched. But you know, you got Harry Potter and Twilight, and as much as I love Marvel comics and Marvel movies in the MCU, Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man is the end of the first verse. Yeah. And like, what? Are you kidding me? Yeah. And Cubs Go All Away Again is a lyric that upset me to no end because it's like, again, it was 108 years before then. Just say Cubs win. That's a great lyric. That's significant. I don't like the Chicago Cubs, but that's a huge milestone. You know, they certainly could have talked about the Red Sox. You know what I'm saying, Jeff? But the probably the most egregious like lyrical approach is when it goes Unabomber, Bobbitt John bombing Boston Marathon. So you're doing last name first. John Bobbitt, guy who had his dick cut off by his wife, Lorena Bobbitt. John Bobbitt, people would remember from that time period, but Bobbitt John, not necessarily. Bombing Boston Marathon, you did the same thing. And like, why are you using this device? Also, it's followed by Balloon Boy, one of the least significant things in our history, but I don't know.
Sorry,
I did all this stuff on Shitty Song of the Week, but I'm sorry, what were you saying, Jeff?
There was just a huge spider crawling on my wall, and it decided to get way closer to me. So I was like, nope.
I would have put you in the big screen if the spider showed up. Let me just in case he comes back at some point. Yeah, I don't.
But yeah, the Unabomber and a guy getting his dick cut off, and then other people getting injured. It's like you were saying. Where are you going with this? Like, yes, we might know your references, but that doesn't make them significant. Like, it seemed like there was intended to be like significant references in the first one.
Yeah. Teresa, one of the co-hosts from Shitty Song of the Week, she pointed out that it's the ultimate member berries for people who member South Park. South Park? But it's like, member Firefest? Remember Michael Phelps?
Remember Tiger King?
Yeah. Oh, and that's my favorite line. My favorite bad line is Stranger Things Tiger King. So it's like, all right, so we're just shouting out Netflix here, right? That's
the whole thing is basically like, we watch Netflix, the song.
The song, yeah.
That would be actually probably a more interesting song if you chronicled Netflix's original programming names. That would be far superior to Fall Out Boy's "We Didn't Start the Fire."
But Jeff, is there a more fitting to a great social injustice that occurred to the African American people than having the lyric "Meghan Markle, George Floyd, Burj Khalifa, Metroid"? I mean, that's such a fitting and somber tribute.
Perfect through line. One person was choked to death for 8 minutes. The other person was George Floyd, and then. That was a bad joke. Sorry.
No, you know how we roll here. Yeah, talking about Tom DeLonge and aliens. I'm like, all right, clearly he's friends with the guy who left Blink-182 to go try and find aliens. Yeah, there's a lyric where they talk about Prince and the Queen die. There was like 6 years apart. That doesn't mean you get to combine them. And it's like, oh, you think you're so cute. You said Prince, the Queen. All right. What about Freddie Mercury and the Queen? Because he was in Queen and she was the Queen. I don't know. There's also multiple references to climate change and global warming. Like they say the same thing like 4 different ways. And this isn't a show where we're going to say it's not significant, but this is a show where we're going to say if you write a song about the last 34 years, you probably could say some things once. Like Michael Jordan 23 and Michael Jordan 45. Should we really be talking about Michael Jordan 45? Like his post-baseball career? Do we want to talk about when he was on the Washington Wizards? Is that what we want to highlight when we talk about the greatest basketball player of all time, arguably?
Well, it's also just like, you can just say Michael Jordan. And if you want to do somebody's like numbers and a little bit more relevant, you could have done Kobe 8 and 24. At least there was a reason that he changed his number. And he stayed playing basketball.
Yeah, no, exactly. And by the way, Jason Blair says, can't wait for their next single. Is This Cake? That would be better. Anyway, it's a work of art, but not in the way that it's intended. It's like, it's important. It's so important that somebody missed the mark so badly. And then you read the comments and you think, I don't know, whoever goes through Fall Out Boy's YouTube comments is probably the same person who hides the replies on tweets from OJ Simpson, because you have to read the hidden replies. And
are they all he's killing it?
Yeah, they're basically things like that. It's like, oh man, you really killed it today, Juice. So it's like literally all of it.
Bloody murdered the point, bro.
Yeah, maybe I'll isolate some for a future episode of the Bladtcast. But yeah, and I think that people need to understand when I say that it might be the worst song of my lifetime, you have to put it into the context. This is a band with a lot of resources. This is a band who have made songs that have been very successful. For what they do, they must be well written You know, they appeal to their fan base, but they took somebody else's song and just completely missed the point. You know, it's like it's almost like I don't know. It would be better to do like the Gus Van Sant shot for shot remake of Psycho than to just go off. Sometimes it's better to not have your own vision, is what I'm trying to say, Jeff.
Yeah, if they had just done the lyrics again and the original, we didn't. Because the best part about it was there was a point where, because I hadn't listened to the original first, I listened to theirs first when I was kind of doing a comparison, and I was like, I listened to it off the phone, like the one you sent. It was just like, oh, this sucks. Then I listened to it on my computer with like, you know, a better DAC and my nice headphones, so I could actually hear it like the way it was intended. And the opening, I was like, oh, I don't hate this little like tom solo thing that they're doing. And I was like, it's pretty cool. And then I heard the original. I'm like, oh, the only good part of your song you ripped off from the original. Yes. Good to know that is exactly how it works.
By the way, Jason Blair with the comment of the show, Ja Rule should have done "We didn't start the fire" (parentheses fest). Thank you, Jason. Mm-hmm. I like when things are slow in the copyright and patent world, and Jason has time to sit in for an entire Bladtcast. Or have I been forgetting to stream these to Facebook? I think that actually might be the problem. But I'm glad that he's been here. This was a good one for Jason to. Jason can relate to road tripping. Jason drove from Texas to Southern California with his 3 triplets right as the pandemic was starting. So like they were leaving, and like I think that the way that Jason told me, they were like an hour into their 30-hour drive, or I don't know, whatever it is. And then they found out that Disneyland was going to be closed because of the pandemic. they kept driving. Wow. It was a weird time. Because we like weeks earlier we had talked about meeting up. We were gonna, my kids were gonna meet his kids. We were gonna get something to eat, and then it was like, restaurants are open, but it was a weird time. Let's just say that it was a hard time. And it's more fun now because we have Fall Out Boy. And I do want to give credit because the first time I'm listening through to the Fall Out Boy song, I'm listening to all the shit that they're going through. And I'm like, these motherfuckers aren't going to talk about 9/11. And then they have 9/11 be the last thing. World Trade second plane is not how I'd phrase it. But I'm going to give them partial credit because by making it the last entry, you're admitting that it's the most significant thing over the last 34 years, possibly in like the last, 150 years. You could argue that if you want, but it was like, at least they were like, this thing's actually important. Well, Captain Planet is not important.
Instead of the Cubs win it all again, it should have been the World Trade Center got bombed again. Because it happened twice since '89.
Not even Fall Out Boy can save me now, says Jason. Yeah, exactly. That's true. What if they only referenced the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, the one that was just basically like a fire in an elevator?
What was? I thought it was like the van blew up, but it did nothing.
Yeah, it was like, that's what I think it was. It was like in like the service elevator, like a van like caught on fire, but didn't explode. So it was like one of those, like it was like a car on fire that you drive by and you go, oh, okay.
When I got fired from Premiere, I had taken a picture of a car on fire on the 101, like right before the Ventura exit. And I had made just like I thought, innocuous post, just being like every day on the job, just because it was like, every day you're trying to get, you're doing work, some sort of car's on fire or something, right? Like it wasn't meant to insult my job. It was just like a haha, like Monday or something. When I got fired, they were like, and you like threatened the building by posting this car on fire. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
Like literally tried to be like, you're like playing interpreter with things I posted that are like not even anywhere close to what was going on. So like, if this is why you're letting me go, like this is incredibly inappropriate, but no one gave a shit.
I do remember that picture though. It was a great picture. And if your social media hadn't been deleted, I would bring it up now and share it with people. But instead, we'll say thank you to Will Sterling for being with us at the beginning. Will is no longer with us, but don't worry, he's still alive. And
He's
Tim Simon, by the way,
R.I.P.
he says, Tim Simon says, having not heard the Fall Out Boy thing, I'd have to say the most glaring difference is the significance and gravity of Billy's subjects and the relative trite quality to this new attempt. Yes, 100%. There are important things scattered throughout the Fall Out Boy version. Boston Marathon bombing is very important. I'm not trying to discount the Oklahoma City bombing. They list Sandy Hook and Columbine, and I think it's like, yeah, you should mention that, hey, remember school shootings? Yeah, there's actually a lot of them. If you want to do a whole verse of school shootings, you're making a very strong point. And honestly, I think if they had done that, I wouldn't even talk about the song, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to be that guy.
Well, but even if it wasn't good, if they had done that, you would have been like, oh, okay. The main question with this one is just like, what's the point? Like, what was the point about making this song?
It's just the one word, why? Why did you do this? No one asked you to do this. Mm-hmm. Literally no one. Somebody. It's like all those memes. That's no one, blank space, Fall Out Boy. We didn't start the fire.
We didn't start the fire. No one asked.
No one asked. Yeah. And of course, Will can be found at Will Sterling _ and Jeff cannot be found. And that's the way we like it. But he can be found here on the Bladtcast. So do you think you'll get back out to the movies for Oppenheimer? Because that seems like one, knowing you, that seems like one you'll get out there for.
Yeah, I think, as we kind of settle down and like the things that we're doing are settling down a little bit, I'm definitely going to try and make it out to the movies. I'd like to go see the new Mission Impossible one too, just because I feel like those I agreed with the things you were saying before, where it's just like Tom Cruise is a legitimate movie star. Like, you can hate his guts as a human being because like he does all sorts of weird, crazy shit. It seems like there's no point debating whether or not he's a fantastic actor and a fantastic action movie star, because he just is. You couldn't be as crazy and nutso as he is and do as many great movies where you're not just watching the whole time being like, fucking Tom Cruise, if he wasn't as good as he is. So you just kind of got to give him the credit for it. So I know he makes his movies to be seen in the theater, and it's like you get something out of seeing them in the theater. So I'll try and see that, but I'm definitely going to make time to see Oppenheimer, because it's, again, Chris Nolan, same thing. He makes his movies for the theater, so that's where you got to see them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there are 70 millimeter presentations of Oppenheimer, depending on where people live, which I guess that's not the same as IMAX, because I think IMAX isn't 70 millimeter. I think it's a different size, but I actually don't. I'm literally talking shit out of my mouth because I actually don't know.
I don't know either, but isn't it it's a ratio difference, right? Like IMAX is a certain aspect ratio, whereas 70 millimeter is a different aspect ratio, but there's generally the same kind of oversized film for extra saturation and pixels, whatever you want to call them.
So IMAX 70 millimeter is the original IMAX format. A typical IMAX screen is 16 meters metric. 16 meters high by 22 meters wide, while digital IMAX screen is 9.5 high by 18 meters wide. So yes, the main difference is the resolution. And I'm always fascinated by 70 millimeter. There are 70 millimeter cuts, definitely for A New Hope, but Empire Strikes Back and I think Return of the Jedi. But the Empire Strikes Back one is the most significant because it has different versions of some scenes and some stuff that they cut out because it was so expensive to make 70 millimeter prints. When George went in and made some changes, they're like, well, we're not changing these prints. They had to start earlier. They needed more time to make them. And so every once in a while, I know my pal Eric Connor, who's been on the show a number of times and I do Marvel movie talk with, he saw, I think it was Empire. He saw it in 70 millimeter. I'm like, I didn't even know that there was a screening of it. It's kind of a white whale for me. I don't want to kill it. I just want to watch it,
I saw Hateful Eight in 70 millimeter at the old ArcLight Sherman Oaks, which I heard is gone now.
Yeah, it was a Regal for a little bit. Regal bought that, but then now it's just closed again. So yeah.
I saw they had a 70 millimeter Hateful Eight. I saw it on like Christmas Day when it came out. That was cool.
Nice. Yeah, I for whatever reason, I think they had a 70 millimeter presentation at the Writers Guild, so I was able to see it there. And yeah, when you can see, I mean, I like IMAX. My favorite way to see movies is IMAX 2D. I love IMAX 2D. I do not like IMAX 3D, and I definitely don't like regular screen 3D in general. And Jason Blair, once again, coming through with the answers. Original IMAX was 70 millimeter, but none of the frame is used for the sound. It's all used for the picture. Normal 70 millimeter, that's right. You needed to save some of the frame for analog sound. Thank you, Jason. And yeah, I guess I shouldn't have complained about the metric system when it's 70 millimeter. So we're just fundamentally starting with
this is the metric 7 millimeter. So we go 5 meter up.
In any case, we did one of our classic Bladtcast hours, which is an hour and 45 minutes. You're welcome, everyone, for the extra content. Think about it. If we'd stopped at an hour, we never would have talked about Fall Out Boy, and you'd all be so much worse for it. But Jeff, great talking to you, and I hope that we have some movie fun to talk about. Where are you at seeing trailers, or do you know anything about Blue Beetle? Are you excited for that? I
haven't seen any trailers for it, but I'm excited for it in the sense that I watched that karate or a Cobra Kai show. So I've seen that the kid who's going to be the main kid, and he's good enough. He's gotten better over the years. So I'm excited to give him a chance. I've liked Jaime in animated versions. So I think it's worth giving him a shot. Live action could be interesting. He's an interesting character.
Yeah, I'm all for it. And I was telling Will we were making plans of trying to see it together when he's back in town. Just for whatever reason, Heather saw the trailer for it before Flash, and she just leaned in and she said, "No." I'm like, all right. Honestly, it does make it easier when I'm just flying solo. But anyway, thanks to Jeff DeRay, thanks to Will Sterling, thanks to Jason Blair, Tim Salmon, Cut of the Jib, and anybody else I might have forgotten in the chat. Man, these days where Dominicus Saxon is busy, it always feels weird to not have him with us. But you just got a shout out, buddy. We will talk to you soon, and we'll see what I've got in store for 553. We have to catch up with Zia. I want to talk to my pal Tom Kelly, who you'll notice that my pal Tom Kelly was not a story for my trip to New York. I recorded an episode of his podcast in his apartment, which he posted, and we recorded an episode of my podcast at his apartment, and it got deleted by the device that he used. So he owes me, basically. That's right. I'm coming for you. But that's all the time we have for now. We'll see you next time on the Bladtcast.